I never imagined that losing him would mean I'd have to become both mother and father overnight. But life doesn't ask for permission. It just hits. And that's when I realized love alone wasn't enough. I had to fight against all odds. The morning had begun like any other. Sunlight filtered softly through the curtains, casting warm stripes across our small living room. Oh yeah, my little 2-year-old was playing with her stuffed bunny, humming a tune that made my heart swell. And then the call came. I remember the exact moment. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize, and something in my gut told me it was bad. The voice on the other end spoke slowly, each word breaking me a little more. "Ma'am, I'm afraid there's been an accident. Your husband..." Everything after that blurred. The room seemed to spin. My knees buckled. I clutched Alia, who looked at me with innocent eyes that couldn't yet comprehend that her father wouldn't come home again. I sank to the floor, holding her tight, rocking back and forth. Tears streamed down my face, a mixture of disbelief, pain, and fear. How could this be real? Just yesterday we were laughing over breakfast, planning a vacation, and now he was gone. Gone, leaving me with a tiny child and a lifetime of unanswered questions. In the days that followed, grief became a living thing in our apartment. I would wake up to the sound of Alia crying, forgetting for a moment that her father would never comfort her again. I found myself standing in front of his empty chair at the dining table, willing him to come back. I whispered apologies, promises, and pleas into the silence. But life doesn't wait for grief. The bills piled up, the rent was due, and Alia, oblivious to our shattered world, needed her mother to be strong. I remember one night, after Alia had fallen asleep, I sat at the edge of our bed, staring at the dark ceiling. I whispered to the shadows, "I don't know if I can do this. I don't even know if I'm strong enough." And then, almost like an echo from another life, his voice came to me in memory. "You are stronger than you know, Maya."
That memory became my lifeline. I began to learn what it truly meant to fight. Not for recognition, not for pride, but for a tiny human whose eyes reflected trust, hope, and unconditional love. Every morning, I forced myself out of bed, each step heavy with grief, but fueled by a determination I never knew existed. Some days, I failed. I cried while cooking, while folding laundry, even while brushing Alia's hair. But slowly, I discovered that my love for her could be a weapon against despair. Every hug, every bedtime story, every whispered, "I love you," became a small victory against the void that threatened to consume me. It wasn't just grief I was fighting. It was the world, my doubts, my exhaustion. And I realized something vital. Life wasn't going to pause for me. If I wanted Alia to survive, if I wanted to honor the life her father had dreamed of for her, I had to stand. So I did. And that was only the beginning. The first weeks after his death were a blur. Days melted into nights, filled with appointments, paperwork, and endless phone calls. The funeral had ended, the flowers had wilted, and yet the emptiness remained. Bills didn't wait for grief. Rent didn't care about heartbreak. And Alia didn't understand why her father wasn't there to play peekaboo or read her favorite bedtime story. I applied for every job I could find. I cleaned houses during the day, worked in a small cafe at night, and even babysat other children when I could. My body ached constantly, my mind was on the verge of collapse, and yet I kept going. Every coin I earned was a lifeline. Every small paycheck meant I could put food on the table, keep the lights on, and buy Alia a small toy to remind her that life still had sweetness. Some nights, after she fell asleep, I would sit on the floor of our tiny apartment, counting coins like a miser, trying to make them stretch further than they could. I cried silently, ashamed of my weakness, but I also whispered promises to her. "I will make it. I will not let the world take away your happiness. I promise. Neighbors began to whisper. Some pitied me, others judged me. She's young. How can she raise a child alone? I heard it all. I wanted to scream at them, to tell them they didn't know my strength, but mostly I wanted to vanish. And then there was Neha, my oldest friend. She was the only one who didn't judge. She would bring over small meals, check on Alya when I had late shifts, and remind me gently, "You're stronger than you think, Maya. Don't forget that." I clung to her words like a lifeline, and I clung to Alya. Her laughter, so pure, so untainted by life's cruelty, reminded me why I had to keep going.
One evening, after an exhausting 12-hour day, I returned home to find Alya waiting at the door, her tiny arms stretched toward me. She had drawn a picture with crayons, two stick figures holding hands, one bigger, one smaller. At the top, in shaky letters, she had written, "Mama and me." I sank to my knees, clutching her to my chest. "I will never let anything happen to you, my love. Not ever," I whispered through tears. Money remained tight. The cafe job barely covered rent, and daycare fees loomed like dark clouds. Some nights, I went without food so all you could eat. I learned to stretch a single loaf of bread over 2 meals. I learned which vegetables lasted longest. I learned how to fall asleep with an empty stomach and still wake with enough energy to fight for another day. Through it all, I discovered a side of myself I never knew existed. I was resourceful. I was strong. I was relentless. And slowly, I began to realize that grief, while heavy, could also fuel determination. Every setback became a challenge to overcome. Every sleepless night became an opportunity to plan. Yet, it wasn't just financial struggles I had to face. Friends from the past drifted away, unable to understand the weight I carried. Some of my husband's relatives were cold, questioning my choices, asking why I wasn't remarried, why I wasn't doing better. But I had no time for judgment. I had a daughter to raise, a life to rebuild. One morning, as Alya toddled around the living room, I paused and watched her. Her hair was messy, her cheeks rosy from play, and she looked at me with eyes so full of trust. I realized in that moment that my fight wasn't just for survival, it was for her. Every sacrifice, every tear, every sleepless night, it was worth it if it meant she could grow up feeling loved and safe. And so, despite exhaustion, despite fear, despite the whispers of the world, I continued. Every day was a battle. Every day was a small victory. And slowly, piece by piece, I began to rebuild a life that had been shattered. Little did I know, the world outside our small apartment didn't wait for grief, and it certainly didn't wait for forgiveness. People stared. Whispers followed me wherever I went. At the park, mothers exchanged sympathetic glances that felt more like judgments. "She's too young. How can she raise a child alone?" I overheard them, their voices dripping with doubt. At first, I wanted to lash out, to defend myself, to tell them they had no idea what it meant to fight for someone else's life. But I quickly realized that anger would only steal my energy that belonged to Alya. Even family became a battlefield. My mother-in-law, once warm and kind, now looked at me with thinly veiled skepticism. "You're doing your best, Maya," she said, her words heavy with doubt. "But can you truly provide for her like her father would have?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that I had already become both mother and father, that I had cried myself to sleep countless nights, but still managed to put food on the table, to keep Alya clothed, to keep her safe. But instead, I nodded, swallowed my pride, and said, "I'll manage, I promise." The nights were the hardest. When Alya finally fell asleep, I would sit on the edge of the bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the life I had imagined for her and the life we now had. Fear crept into my chest, a heavy weight pressing down. Am I enough? I asked myself. Can I give her what she deserves? Some days the loneliness was unbearable. Friends I thought would stay drifted away. Invitations disappeared. Phone calls went unanswered. People didn't know how to talk to a single mother. They didn't know how to face the truth that grief doesn't fit neatly into schedules or polite conversations. One particularly cold evening, I found myself outside the grocery store, Alia asleep in the stroller, a few coins clutched tightly in my hand. A woman glanced at me, then whispered to her friend, "She probably can't even afford diapers." I wanted to vanish. I wanted to disappear into the night and leave this cruel world behind. And yet I couldn't, not with Alia depending on me. It was in that moment I realized that the world's judgment was not a cage. It was a challenge, and I had always been a fighter. I began to rise, not with anger, but with quiet determination. I enrolled Alia in a small, affordable preschool despite my limited income, knowing education was her key to a brighter future. I learned to stretch every penny. I discovered hidden talents I had long ignored: cooking, writing, organizing. Every skill became a tool, every day a battle I could win. There were moments of heartbreak too. Nights when I cried while folding her tiny clothes. Moments when I wished someone would notice my struggle and offer a hand. But most importantly, there were moments of profound love. Alia's laughter echoing through the apartment, her small arms hugging me with trust and devotion, her whispered, "I love you, Mama," that healed wounds no one else could see. And slowly, ever so slowly, I began to reclaim a piece of myself. I refused to let judgment define me. I refused to let grief destroy me. I would fight, not just for survival, but for a life that mattered.
Because I realized the truth. The world could doubt me, it could whisper, it could even turn away. But I would never turn away from my daughter. I would never let her believe that she was anything less than loved. And in that resolve, I found the strength to face another day, another challenge, another whispered doubt. I had become a warrior, not with swords, not with shields, but with love, courage, and unbreakable determination. Little did I know, this was only the beginning. The battles ahead would test every ounce of strength I had. But one thing was certain, I would never stop fighting for Alia. Life, I realized, had a strange way of testing us. Just when the weight of the world felt unbearable, it offered a glimpse of light. Fragile, fleeting, but enough to keep you moving forward. It started with a small triumph. Alia's preschool had a performance coming up, and I scraped together enough money to buy her a tiny costume. Watching her rehearse her little lines in our living room, her eyes sparkling with excitement, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could carve out a life that was more than struggle and grief. I also discovered something unexpected about myself. Late one night, after Alia had fallen asleep, I began writing. At first, it was just a way to let my thoughts out, a journal to release my fear, my anger, my sorrow. But soon I realized I had a voice that could reach others. I started submitting small articles online, sharing stories of resilience and love. The first acceptance email felt like a lifeline, a whisper from the universe that I was capable of more than survival. Through it all, Alia remained my anchor. Her laughter became my fuel. Her tiny hand in mine reminded me why I had to keep going, why I had to fight against every odd stacked against us. Not everything was easy. The cafe job was grueling, the bills were relentless, and sleep became a luxury I could rarely afford. But the small victories mattered. The smile on Alia's face when I returned from work, the first paycheck from my freelance writing, a neighbor's quiet nod of respect,
Slowly, the world that had once felt so harsh began to shift. One evening, after a particularly long day, I sat on the floor with Alia between my knees. She leaned her head against my chest and whispered, "Mama, you're the best mama in the whole world." Tears blurred my vision, but this time they were not only of sorrow, they were tears of pride, of hope, of love that refused to be broken. I began to dream again, cautiously at first. I imagined a small apartment where Alia could play safely, where we could laugh without fear of bills or judgment. I imagined a future where my daughter could grow into a confident, kind, and strong woman, shaped not by hardship alone, but by love, resilience, and example.
Even my relationships began to heal. Friends who had drifted away slowly returned, some inspired by my courage, some realizing their earlier judgments were unfair. Neha remained my constant, a reminder that support and love existed even in the darkest corners. And then came the first moment that truly solidified my hope: Alia's preschool performance. I had saved every penny, worked every extra hour, endured every whisper of judgment just for this night. I watched from the back of the small auditorium as she recited her lines with confidence, her little face glowing under the lights. My chest tightened, tears streaming down my face, but this time I did not hide them. I allowed myself to feel proud. I allowed myself to believe that despite everything, we were building something beautiful, a life of love, resilience, and hope. In that moment, I realized that hope was not something the world gave me. It was something I created. Through every struggle, every tear, every sleepless night, I had built it with my own hands, and it was strong enough to carry both of us forward. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was learning to live, to breathe, to dream again. And for the first time in a long time, I could see a future where the weight of the world didn't crush us, but made us stronger. The hardest battles often bring the sweetest victories, and for Maya and Alia, that truth was finally unfolding. After months of relentless struggle, Maya began to see the fruits of her perseverance. Her freelance writing, once just a small outlet, grew into a modest source of income. Articles she poured her heart into were read and appreciated by strangers, and slowly, opportunities began to multiply. It wasn't much at first, but it was enough to give her a sense of stability, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. Alia's laughter, always her guiding light, grew even brighter. Watching her learn, grow, and thrive filled the gaps that grief had left behind. Her preschool teacher called one evening, praising Alia's progress, mentioning how confident and kind she was becoming. Maya felt a surge of pride that eclipsed every hardship she had endured. Even her relationship with her family began to heal. Her mother-in-law, once cold and skeptical, approached her one afternoon with a quiet apology. "Maya, I see now the strength it takes to do what you've done. I was wrong to doubt you." Maya didn't respond immediately. She let the words sink in, felt the healing, and then smiled gently. "Thank you," she whispered. The acknowledgement mattered more than she could express. Life wasn't perfect. There were still late nights, unpaid bills, and moments of exhaustion. But the difference now was that Maya had learned the power of resilience. She had discovered that even in darkness, a single spark could illuminate a path forward.
One evening, after Alia had gone to bed, Maya sat by the window, looking at the city lights twinkling in the distance. She thought about the journey they had traveled, the loss, the pain, the sleepless nights, the whispered doubts of the world. And she realized something profound. Every tear, every struggle, every sacrifice had shaped them into who they were today. Her gaze fell on a small photo of her late husband on the shelf. She whispered softly,
"We did it. I hope you're proud. She's growing up strong, just like you would have wanted." The next morning brought one of the most beautiful moments of all. Alia had been working on a school project, a scrapbook of her family. When Maya saw the pages, her heart swelled. Each page was filled with drawings, words, and memories. At the end, Alia had written in her small, uneven handwriting, "Mama, you are my hero." Maya's hands trembled as she held her daughter close. In that embrace, every hardship, every tear, every lonely night melted away. She had fought the world for her daughter, and here was the proof. Love, resilience, and unwavering courage could overcome any obstacle. It wasn't just survival anymore. Maya had learned to live fully, to cherish the small moments, to find joy even in hardship. She had become more than a mother. She had become a symbol of strength, a testament to the unbreakable bond between parent and child. And though the road ahead would always have challenges, Maya knew one truth that no hardship could erase. Together, she and Alia could face anything. The world could whisper, judge, or doubt, but their love, courage, and determination would always shine brighter. Time, I realized, has a way of healing even the deepest wounds. Months turned into years, and slowly Maya and Alia's lives transformed. Their small apartment, once a place of struggle, became a home filled with laughter, warmth, and memories of resilience. Alia had grown into a confident, kind, and curious little girl. She would run to Maya with hugs and stories of her day, her eyes shining with trust and love. Maya watched her and marveled at how much they had both grown. The journey had been painful, exhausting, and full of uncertainty, but it had also been a testament to the strength of a mother's love. Maya's freelance work had flourished. She now had enough to provide stability and even small comforts, a cozy reading corner for Alia, weekend outings, and occasional treats that brought joy to their days. But the real treasure was something money could never buy: the bond she shared with her daughter. One afternoon, as Maya and Alia sat in their sunlit living room, Alia asked quietly, "Mama, will we always be together?" Maya smiled, her heart swelling. "Always, my love. No matter what, we'll face everything together."
And in that moment, Maya understood the true meaning of her journey. It wasn't just about survival or proving the world wrong. It was about love, pure, unwavering, limitless love that could turn grief into strength, fear into courage, and struggle into hope. Maya began writing letters for Alia, words she hoped would guide her through life. "Life will challenge you, my love. People may doubt you. The world may be harsh, but remember this: you are stronger than you know, and love will always guide you through the darkest times." She placed the letters in a small wooden box, a legacy of love that Alia would carry with her always. And as she watched her daughter play, she felt a quiet pride, a deep satisfaction that no obstacle, no hardship could ever diminish. Life would continue to bring challenges, as it always does, but Maya now knew that they could face anything. Together, they had not only survived, they had flourished. And that was a victory greater than anything the world could ever take away. To every soul listening, Maya's story is a reminder that love and courage can conquer even the hardest trials. No matter how impossible life seems, strength is often born from the most unexpected places. Fight for what you love, cherish those who depend on you, and never let the world define your worth. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share. It means the world to us,
and it helps bring more stories of hope and resilience to everyone who needs them.